Hello friend, hello neighbor, hello family member. Thank you for tuning into another video of mine. Today, instead of the F1 review, because it wasn't quite finished and I had to do some very important things today, like moving into my brand new studio, which you'll learn about next week, I decided to do a quick shootout between two sets of cans. Last week when I did my explainer video on different types of headphones, I had a lot of questions about the Sennheiser HD280 and 3D Pros versus a pair of Audio Technica headphones, and specifically the ATH M50x. Both are a $150 set of headphones. They are passive, closed-back monitoring headphones, or just for the enjoyment of music. So I want to do a shootout between these two types of headphones. If you're in the market to upgrade your headphones, you need to get out of just the Apple Pods that are in your ear or whatever else you're listening to, or God forbid they're Dr. Dre Beats and you need to upgrade to something real. These are two really solid professional or consumer grade options for monitoring your audio, also mixing your audio, as well as just listening to music. These are two incredible sets of cans. So we're going to do some comparison back and forth with me just listening and giving you my thoughts of the differences between the two of them, as well as doing some somewhat technical observations about the actual differences in the frequency response from both these headphones. Now, as I go back and forth between these two headphones, I'm going to be listening through the Rupert Neve Designs RNHP Precision Headphone Amplifier, which I've been using a lot with my HD650s. The reason I'm using this is just to get the most meaningful signal I possibly can out of each of these headphones as I compare them. So the first track I'm listening to is a cinematic piece. It's actually by Tony Anderson. It's called The King from his Heart of Man soundtrack, and it's very cinematic. Stereo field is very beautiful and rich. It's a real recorded orchestra as well as delicious synthesizers. It's an incredible master. It's a wonderful piece of music, high quality, streaming via Spotify. Starting with the HD380 Pros, what I noticed about the mix was it sounded real clean. It sounded what I would assume what Tony intended us to hear. When I switch over to the ATH M50x, one of the things I noticed right off the bat is there is a tremendously bigger bass response. Also, the high end is very loud and very harsh, almost as if they've been pumped up in the headphones, like they've been tuned. Moving on to more of a hip-hop feel. So switching over to the hip-hop track, I'm listening to Post Malone's Psycho from his new album Beer Bongs and Bentleys. This is a modern produced hip-hop track full of really deliciously compressed sounds, a nice mix. His voice sits right in the middle of the Phantom stereo image, and they've got kind of some effects going on, like a low and a high pass filter on his voice, kind of just making it deliciously sounding right there in the middle. So starting with the 380 Pros, it sounds very natural. There's not a lot of low end naturally in the 380 Pros as far as like that big booming bass that we're all used to in like big type headphone sounds. If I switch over to the ATH M50x, what I notice is, again, the highs are incredibly harsh. You can hear it a lot on the sibilance of Post's voice because he's already really compressed. There's already a lot of high end in this track because that real high end sounds really poppy and good, and we like that sound as a culture. But what has happened in these headphones, the ATH M50x, is like they've really just tuned it to be very high end, very low end, almost like a U-shaped EQ curve. So I noticed that in both the more cinematic classical mix as well as the more hip-hop mix is there is more of the mid frequencies in the 380s. And the reason is because it doesn't have such a booming low end and a massively loud and harsh high end. This is important. It does sound a little bit more subdued and more flat, which is good in my opinion, which isn't culturally maybe the best. You might prefer having a higher high end and a higher low end, but you do tend to lose some of the character of the mid frequencies when you pump those so hard, especially on a track that's already pumping them. Because again, our culture, we love the low and the high, we don't like the middle. We're very polarized as a culture. We're polarized politically, we're polarized sonically. Let's transition over. We're going to transition over and actually look at the EQ spectrum over time. What I did was I recorded that Post Malone track, Psycho, with my Rode NTG3 sticking right into the ear cup on the left side of each of these sets of cans. It was about an inch from each of the drivers. Volume was the same. All things were the same. We're going to look at this EQ together. So as we listen to the AT, as you see the frequencies start to kind of lock in place with the Fab Filter Pro Q2, you can see what I'm talking about. Look at the shape of this EQ curve. Look at all that high end. On average, the high end is way high. Bass is also booming down here. And look, there's even a spike right there in the high mids. So compare that to this of the Sennheiser HD380 Pro. So this is such a very subtle difference here with the Rode NTG3. And remember, this is not very scientific. I'm just kind of messing around. Over here between 100 and 500, that dips lower in the AT in the Audio Technicas, and it's a little bit higher in the Sennheiser HD380 Pros. As well as like the 1000 to 5000 range also dips very low on the Audio Technicas, and it does not as much on the 380 Pros. 380 Pro still has a high end and a robust low end, but it's much more noticeable audibly from the Audio Technica, even though the measurements wouldn't say so. So here's what's happening in my opinion. Those mid frequencies that are more flat here on the graph in the 380 Pros manipulate the sounds of those extreme frequencies for us on these cans versus these. These therefore sound more punchy on the low end and the high end versus these, which sound more natural, reflecting back to you a more flat representation of the mix you're listening to. So overall, what's the answer? Personally, when I'm just consuming music and listening to it, I prefer the 380 Pros. And the reason is, not only do they have a flatter frequency response, which I appreciate, they're less boomy on the low end. And I do love bass. Trust me, I love a lot of good bass. But I don't want so much bass that I lose character of the mix when I'm listening to music, creating music, or monitoring audio out in the field, and this is important. As far as design goes, the AT definitely wins. Audio Technica is crushing it right here. These look really sharp. The cups are nice. They fit gently over the ear versus the 380 Pros. They do not have a really cool design. They look kind of dumb. The 280 Pros look a lot better than these. These are just very simple cups, but they do fit a lot bigger over the ears and are much more comfortable in that way. I can wear them for much longer and be a little less sweaty inside them. So at the end of the day, I would buy the 380 Pros again. Thank you all for tuning in to another video that I made. Please subscribe because I'm growing this year to 100,000 and you're going to be a part of that. Be sure and follow me over on Twitter at Oliver J. Hughes. That's where I'm going to be posting things about life. It's about filmmaking, about composing, about audio, and all things just like that. And with nothing else, I'll see you all next week.